All right, on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we talk a little bit about the win over Dayton and the emergence of Daeshun Ruffin. So look forward to that. And we have a nice long preview of the Sugar Bowl. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the show. Ole Miss was a 10-point win over Dayton. They won the game 76-68 in a big game, a big win indeed. We're going to talk about that today. Before I get started, I do want to tell you about this show is brought to you by Sonos. Today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com for more information. Now, my take is simple. This team is better with Daeshun Ruffin on the floor. And the stats over the last two games kind of prove that out. Basically, you have a bunch of players that perform a certain way when he is there or not. He adds an added dimension to this team and makes them more effective. Against Middle Tennessee, you have a situation where the same guys, the usual suspects, performed like they always do. But Daeshun Ruffin got 12 points in 13 minutes. And that provided the difference in the game and allowed a 10-point win. Against Dayton last Saturday, Daeshun Ruffin gave 19 points in 17 minutes. You have a player that is performing at more than a point a minute clip. And it is allowing the other players that are performing, to be fair, the same way they always do. They're doing the same stuff. Jamin Brakefield, 9 points. Jarkel Joyner, 12 points. Nassim Brooks got 16 points in that game in 36 minutes. But here comes Daeshun Ruffin with 19 points in 17 minutes. Being the difference in the game. There's starting to be a rotation put together. And I think as a pitch count, and it gets pulled off of Daeshun Ruffin once he gets healthy, once the splint comes off of him and it becomes more natural, he's going to be a much better player, just in time for conference play. Thank goodness for that, because he provides something that we all wanted going into conference play, and that is hope. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do in the future. It's going to be fairly special, honestly. And I think that he's going to drop 30 points sooner rather than later in SEC play. I mean, that's my take on Daeshun Ruffin and this basketball team as a whole. Is a completely different animal with a functional Daeshun Ruffin. He provides a spark that without him, Ole Miss doesn't have. Nobody can replace him. I mean, Jamin Brakefield, Matthew Morrell, Nasir Brooks, all those guys are really special. They can't provide the spark that Daeshun Ruffin does. I can see why this team was constructed this way. Because without him, the same problem of basically shooting yourself cold and scoring droughts, it existed. Just like last year. And you're like, oh, we got all these players coming in and we got the same issue. Then when they put Daeshun Ruffin on the floor and he starts going to the basket and doing all the things, he's like a little bit of a microwave. He's only 5'9". He's a little bitty guy, but he is fearless around the goal. And because of that, you're going to get open shots outside. Now, you're going to eventually make them. If Daeshun Ruffin's playing, Ole Miss is going to beat a big boy this year. That's going to happen. There's too many points, too quickly. He can allow you to catch up. He's going to hit 30 points against somebody, and Ole Miss is going to win the game against a team that is ranked higher than them, because he's that special of a player, and you can see him kind of getting into shape. But once he gets the splint off of his shooting hand, and you can see it right-handed, he's going to be better from three-point range. And then whenever that starts happening and they start having to respect him doing that, because what's going to happen is they're going to sag back. He's going to have to make a couple of three-point shots to force people to come out and defend him. As soon as that happens, it's really going to open up the defense, and it's going to open up other players on the Ole Miss roster because they're just sagging back towards the basket right now, and you have to kind of shoot them out of this. So it's a pretty good thing. All right. Coming up in the second segment, we talked to Josh Neighbors from Locked On Big 12 about the Ole Miss Baylor Sugar Bowl, about 17 minutes worth. So stick around for that. Bowl season is here, Ole Miss fans. Basically, you can set up entry and handle daily fantasy through PrizePicks. Use promo code LOCKEDON for your entry. PrizePicks is the leader in college sports daily fantasy. It offers more college football and basketball props than anyone in the world and offers the all-star players of the Power 5 as well as the mid-major players you might not have even heard of. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of. In basketball, you can play points, rebounds, assists, threes made, or more. All of your users that deposit and use the promo code LOCKEDON will get a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100. Just use promo code LOCKEDON. Basically, you pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times. On any entry, it's just you versus the projected numbers. PrizePicks allows multiple sports. You can take the over on Mahomes and the under on LeBron James. Use the award-winning app for the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. So PrizePicks offers safe and fast withdrawals. That's PrizePicks. Promo code LOCKEDON for your entry today.
Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here of Locked On Big 12. Stephen Willis of Locked On Rebels. We are going to preview the 2022 Sugar Bowl 2021 season. What happens on the first day of 2022 between Baylor and Ole Miss. This is part of the Ultimate College Football Bowl preview that we're doing here for Locked On. So this is a pretty interesting matchup because this is one of those where each of these teams had really impressive seasons, and nobody feels like they're being snubbed from the college football playoff. Nobody's that concerned about opt-outs. So it's pretty significant, I would say, Stephen, for both programs.
Yeah, it's very, very significant. When you look at these schools, but also Ole Miss is the high-flying offensive team, and the Big 12 team is actually the ground and pound, like LSU from 2012 team. So it's a nice stylistic difference between the two teams. I'm expecting a fairly good game.
Yeah, it's also interesting. Lane Kiffin has had an affinity for former Baylor assistants, right? I mean, he's had Kendall Briles and Jeff Levy, who were both coaches at Baylor. And obviously that's a tumultuous time in Baylor's history. But like you mentioned, that's when Baylor was known for that offense, right? The Briles tree, their offense, one of the more innovative and successful, and still successful right now in the college ranks. So I think that's kind of an interesting wrinkle to this matchup too.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Like Jeff Levy's actually coaching in the game before he goes to Oklahoma. Right. So that's how personal he is taking that kind of, because he just wants to coach against Baylor, which I found to be fairly interesting.
Right.
But the weird thing is this, after 5 years, this has kind of become the Lane Kiffin offense. Now they bring the Baylor guys in to install the guts of it, the tempo and things like that to get in the offense. Then he kind of goes away from it because after year one at Ole Miss, Randy Clements was on the staff then. Joe John Finley was on the staff. They moved on. They were hired outside of the Baylor tree. So I think mainly the Baylor hire is for install purposes, and then kind of Lane does his own thing with the offense.
Yeah, and that's the other interesting part of this too, is there's two coaches here who were, for different reasons, rumored for head coaching jobs elsewhere, and it's just because of the success that 10-2 at Ole Miss. I know it's a school that aspires to those heights, but it's really difficult in the SEC West. I mean, that is the toughest division in all of college football. There's no question about that. And what is the first 10-win regular season in program history? This game is in a lot of ways going to be a celebration of that for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think so. If Ole Miss wins this game, it's the most games won in a season in Ole Miss history.
Mm.
As storied as they were back in the day. Now, a lot of that is because they played 9 regular season games
Right.
back.
Right.
So whenever they were really good and just would beat everybody, it just didn't matter. They didn't play enough games in the season. But 11 regular season games, the Sugar Bowl, which means so much to Ole Miss fans and the Ole Miss program. I think Ole Miss is in position. This will be third in appearances in the Sugar Bowl history. And maybe if they win the game, they'd be second in wins. The game means a lot to Ole Miss fandom from back in the day when Ole Miss was going to the Sugar Bowl fairly consistently. So I'm looking forward to see what that means. When I get down to New Orleans, Ole Miss fans are going to party. It's going to be a party. They're going to drink New Orleans dry. So I'm looking forward to that to see if that bleeds over into the game. How are the players going to react to it? I think they're going to be excited. Like you said, no opt-outs for this game. And with them being that excited, I'm curious, just this could be a really exciting game on both sides, even the Baylor side of the coin. This could be a really well played and a really exciting, excitement-filled bowl game for a non-playoff game.
Yeah, and that is the one thing also I want to touch on is the fact that it's a unique spot because these guys they're playing, and we saw New Year's Six bowls last year. The big one that comes to my mind was that A&M North Carolina game. I mean, we got a preview of Sam Howell's offense this year because none of the skill players wanted to be involved in that game last year, which was that was such an fun offense to watch. That's not the case. And I think, do you believe Matt Corral really set the tone for that when he said, no, I'm going to play? Obviously, a guy who is a first-round talent is going to be one of the first, at least in my opinion, 3 quarterbacks probably taken. I'd say Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett are probably the 3 that you're going to see have a good chance to go in that first round. At least 2 of those 3. Do you think he kind of set the tone with that and everybody else followed suit?
Yeah, I think Matt Corral is probably the greatest leader of a quarterback in Ole Miss history. Whenever he said we all need to get vaccinated, and the whole team got vaccinated. So everything plays off of his decision. He has such a control because he leads by example, and he's such a good player, and he just buys into everything that's going on inside that building, which you don't see in college football very much these days. And it's going to help him whenever he advances to the next level. But yeah, I think it was his decision, and he led those guys down the road because we could have had opt-outs. Last year we had Elijah Moore and Kenny Yeboah opt out of the Outback Bowl. There could have been easily some outbacks or some opt-outs this year with like Sam Williams and people like that. But no, none of that seems to be happening. Mainly because I think this is the Sugar Bowl too. If Ole Miss would have gone to the Peach Bowl, it might have been a little bit different.
Yeah, and it's once again, I'm never going to knock those kids for doing it. Their future is the most important thing. Jake Butt is a great example of what happens sometimes, and I know it's a freak accident, but that's a guy who's going to be an NFL player, and I still think he's had a nice, okay NFL career. But tearing an ACL going into a draft is not a great position to be in. I will say this: I'm a massive Matt Corral fan. I think he was known as kind of the wild card, a big armed kid, and all the talent in the world. But I will say this, and I think the Tennessee game is a good example this year. The kid will do whatever it takes to win, like whatever it takes to win. And I thought they ran him way too much in that game. He was clearly not operating at even close to 100% as that game continued, stuck it out. And I think that's what you're talking about. Like, he is one of the people, and for everything I've seen at Ole Miss, from Ole Miss fans and just kind of people, on Twitter that I follow that are fans of the program, that he is beloved. I mean, he's absolutely beloved because of that leadership and because he does not seem to be, he does have a little bit of a cocky streak, sure, whatever, confidence streak, but like it also always does seem to come back to the team. Like, this is not a guy who's out there on an island by his own. This is about the group. It's about the collective.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, but I think the Tennessee game at the end of it is kind of what cost Matt Corral the Heisman.
Yeah,
when he got hurt because the next 3 or 4 weeks he wasn't quite 100%. Everybody was allowed to pass him in the ranks, so that probably cost him the major award by him going completely all out and giving absolutely every grain that he had against Tennessee. And it was needed. That game was needed.
Yeah.
And it was something, it was a huge win. But the important thing, whenever he kind of got hurt, whenever that happened, is you saw the emergence of the Ole Miss defense. And I think Ole Miss gave up over 20 points like one time for the rest of the season or something like that. And those guys building up, and you saw a team start to really gel together. Now, I'd hate to know, or I'd love to know actually, what this team would look like if Matt Corral would not have gotten hurt against Tennessee, because if that defense improved, I mean, you're looking at probably, 11-1, because they wouldn't have lost to Auburn. They had 5 trips in the red zone anyway.
That Auburn game was one of those where you're like, Lane, take, because in the end of the game, I mean, they would have been within one score if they'd kicked the field goals when they needed to, right? And that was one of those where it's like, I understand. We all get the analytics, man. We get it. But like at some point in time, and at that point, we're all operating the assumption that your quarterback's on 110%. Like, take the freaking points, man. Just take them. Yeah. They're giving them. Just take them. Just take them.
He got carted to the locker room. I mean, it's crazy. But if there's a chance, Ole Miss should have won that game. But the analytics, and I always joke with people, Lane has a couple of games a year, and he did it with Alabama and Auburn this year, where he plays the game like a 12-year-old playing Madden.
Right.
That's just going to happen. And I mean, it was one of those things. It is what it is. You take the good with the bad.
Right. Yeah. With Lane Kiffin, you do. And on the opposite side, just get a little bit here about Baylor. What a season from Dave Aranda. They go 2-7 his first year at Baylor. And I always say this, he is one of the most introspective coaches, if not the most introspective coach in all of college football. He was very harsh on himself about the staff that he brought in, made changes. Larry Fedora out. They bring in Jeff Grimes from BYU. They bring in Eric Mateos, the offensive line coach. Their offensive line was one of the worst in all of college football in 2020. In 2021, it was one of the top 25 there towards the end of the season. Do they have top 25 offensive line talent? Probably not. They performed that way. Yes, they did. They got steady quarterback play all the year. Their defense, and I'll stick by this, the best game that Baylor played all year was the game against Oklahoma, and I think, there's a chance that maybe this game plays out that way because of how good of a coach Dave Aranda is. But a week after getting torched by Chandler Morris, back quarterback from TCU, he goes for 500 yards. They respond by going up against Oklahoma and the presumptive Heisman favorite at the end of the year in Spencer Rattler, and also a midseason kind of weirdly Heisman contender in Caleb Williams, and they beat the brakes off them. They could not get anything going on offense, and they made life miserable for them. And that just shows you that this team bought in. He really did make the changes he needed to make. They had Abram Smith, who was a converted linebacker at running back for them and was one of the best running backs in the entire Big 12 conference, a conference that is deep at running back. Every single team in the Big 12 conference has good running backs. And so for them to get to these heights this year and to achieve what they did was a testament to Dave Aranda. It was a testament to the team buying in and the changes that he had made. So I think that is where I look at this game and I say, these are two teams that are great stories, right? This is an Oklahoma State. Congratulations to them for making New Year's Six, but Notre Dame and Oklahoma State were both teams that had a potential shot at the college football playoff, and they're outside looking in. These are two teams right here that really did accomplish, like, they reached about all they could this year. I mean, I know you said, Ole Miss could go on 11-1, but, kind of in the end, like 10-2, I mean, that is, if you look at the roster and look what they had coming into the season, 10-2 is a maximization of talent for Ole Miss. And I would say, Baylor going, what was it, 10-11-2, whatever it was, is a maximization of talent for them also.
Yeah, like I said, this is one of those games that's going to be a lot of fun because Ole Miss is in the role of the traditional Big 12 team. Baylor's in the role of the traditional SEC team.
Right.
And I think the offensive line coach from Les Miles, it's kind of like you talked about Dave Aranda. They just kind of leaned into that LSU from 2013 when he first got there and started building that, as opposed to the chaos of trying to create the 2019 LSU team. Because I think that's what he was trying to do in 2020 last year. But you can see them just It's really cool. It just really is. I like Dave Aranda. I think he was the heart behind that 2019 LSU team.
People don't talk about the defense enough. That defense
Yeah.
had to be good enough to win, and they were top 30, and they played awesome towards the back end of the season, and they basically did their job. Like they didn't have to do everything, but he coached a championship level defense, and that's not one of the best defenses that LSU's ever had.
No, because LSU's still trying to figure out play volume because that's the first year they really did tempo.
Mm-hmm.
And, so Dave Aranda had to figure that out as well. And it was a phenomenal job by Aranda.
Yeah, and so in this game, Baylor 1-point favorites. This game is on New Year's Day. I believe it is at 8:45 Eastern time as the start time. So 7:45 for all of you Central folks out there. And I think from what I can tell, I'm not sure how many opt-outs Baylor has in this game, but I think the spread is interesting. With just being a 1-point, Vegas seems to think this game is pretty much a toss-up, and I do believe it's kind of this high-powered offense going up against a month or whatever, however long it was, nearly a month and dozen plus practices of Baylor being able to say, all right, what are we going to do to shut down Matt Corral? What are we going to do to shut down? Because this Ole Miss offense, to me, while it is high-powered, it doesn't have the horses that's had the outside. I know Drummond's been awesome, banged up during the year at some points, but like this is a team that I feel like the guys in the backfield are almost a little bit better than the guys they've had outside this year.
Yeah, all of the receivers and the tight end got hurt in the middle of the season.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it was the weirdest thing. So whenever they were all clicking at the beginning, they were all clicking early in the year. And you started to see them come back against Mississippi State at the end of the year. So they'll all be back for the game. Jonathan Mingo is a big piece in that wide receiving group to go with Braylon Sanders and Dontario Drummond. Casey Kelly will be a surprise at the tight end position to pay attention to. But you're right about the backs. This team was built around Jerry and Ely, Henry Parrish, and Snoop Connor. They're just the three-headed monster back there. And people don't realize they assume Lane Kiffin and this Baylor offense, and they're like, oh, this is just throw it around the yard. This team runs 65% of the time. And, I mean, they've led the SEC in rushing like the last 2 years. And this could be a fun game. The tempo is what Ole Miss really is going to try and do in this game. They're going to try and go really, really fast. Baylor wants this game to be 21-10, 21-14.
Yeah.
If it gets in the 30s, you start to wonder if Baylor has the horses to actually keep up. So it's going to come down to who can impose their will on the other team. Is it that low-scoring game that Baylor wants, or is it a game in the 30s that Ole Miss wants?
Yeah, and let's make some picks here. So I think Ole Miss is going to win. I just think this I think they do get kind of that 30 number. I think they got a lot of time. They'll be fresher, and I think they can catch the Baylor defense early. And, I'm not sure if I think Gary Behan should be able to play, but maybe they roll with Blake Shapen. It's going to be I think it might be an open competition going into the next season. Gary did a good job this year, but Blake is, pretty able, competent quarterback. We saw it in the first half of their Big 12 championship game. So, they might get both guys some run in this game, but I'm going to go with Ole Miss winning this one. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Rebels in this game. I think they're going to get about a touchdown. I'm thinking 31-24.
I'm kind of right in that zone as well. Steven, where can people find you and the show and all of your work and its variety?
Yes, I'm the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're available wherever you can find podcasts, and we have a YouTube channel that is currently being built. So whenever that's up, you'll get addresses on that on my Twitter. You can find me, as you see below, at the Stephen Willis, and I'm still waiting for the Locked On Show Twitter page as well.
You can find me at Josh Neighbors _. You can find the show at LO Big 12. You can find Locked On Big 12 wherever you guys get your podcast and on YouTube. Steven, it has been.
All right, BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for sports action all this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC to your favorite Vegas casino games, Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2021. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Yes, have you heard about Built Bar? That's Built Bar. Basically, it's a tasty treat that tastes like a candy bar, even better than a candy bar. It's a Built Bar. It's built with so much holiday goodness, rich and decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, and net carbs, along with fat. It's also high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. So many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing. Will you have raspberry or mint brownie or cherry or double chocolate? So many different things are available for you. You friends with Santa? Tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars into those stockings with so many flavors they'd make anybody's Christmas morning a happy one. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. Again, go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's Built.com. All right, that was Josh Neighbors from Blocked on Big 12 talking about the Sugar Bowl, Ole Miss and Baylor, coming up in about, less than 2 weeks. So the down and dirty is going on with preparation for that game. Looking forward to it. Looking also at the game, I'm excited about, the difference between a Matt Corral and a Kenny Pickett. Matt Corral, who wants to play this game and do what all he needs to do, versus somebody that doesn't want to play this game. People talk about how bowl games are exhibitions, and they are, but they're no more exhibitions than non-conference games. If you're a quarterback and you played against, say, Western Michigan, you should play in this game. This is just an end-of-season non-conference game. If you played for Georgia against Georgia Tech, you should play in the playoff. It's just another non-conference game. If you played in all these other things, Kentucky versus Louisville, this is just another non-conference game. All the records matter. All the stats matter. Everything is no different than a non-conference. They basically made this a fifth non-conference game. So play in the game. That's what I'm saying here. So anyway, tune in. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss Podcast your first listen every day. Make sure you listen to the Ultimate College Football Preview in 2021, local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. Most comprehensive college football playoff preview begins Friday. So whenever you're dealing with that game, when you're dealing with the Sugar Bowl and different things, like Charles Cross from Mississippi State is opting out and declaring for the NFL draft. I get that. But in the age of NIL, in the age of the Alston ruling, when you're actually getting paid to play, now the school's not paying you directly, except for the Alston case. At Ole Miss, they're getting paid directly. And there's no opt-outs at Ole Miss, by the way, just so we're clear. But whenever that happens, you have a choice with your legacy. Do you want to be known as a hero of the school and what's going on, or do you want to be known as a mercenary? Matt Corral has a chance to cement his legacy in a way that few others can touch. I mean, there's 4 players in Ole Miss football history that have an argument to be on the same stratosphere that he has a chance with the win against Baylor to hit. It's 11 wins overall. Now, because of that, you don't opt out. You don't know what's going on. Because he's trying to compete against Archie Manning, against Eli Manning, and against Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly has better stats than likely Matt Corral is going to hit. So leadership is his pathway to being known as the GOAT. And his leadership is by far been the best we've seen at Ole Miss possibly ever. At least in a public sphere. But because of that, he needs to put up numbers against Baylor. Baylor has a good defensive team. I'm really looking forward to this game. This game has a chance to play out a lot like the Tennessee game as far as defensively. But with Ole Miss's receivers being back, it could turn out to be in a good old-fashioned shootout. If this is a game that gets into the 30s, like we talked about in the preview with Josh Neighbors, I don't think Baylor has the horses to be able to put up that many points, especially against this defense that does things a little bit differently. It's funny to see a Baylor team that is essentially playing like an LSU team from the mid-2000s, one of those old Les Miles teams. That's what Baylor's playing like. It's interesting to see that. Defense, offense, it makes sense. And then you have the Ole Miss one that is playing like a mid-2000s Big 12 team, to where they are just completely fun and gun. Just massive numbers coming up. Anyway, thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Please tune in tomorrow when we continue to talk about the Sugar Bowl. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. And remember, be patient with me this week. I've got 3 radiations this week, so times could shift. No telling what could happen this week's going. But it'll start to normalize after that. Once we get into bowl week, we'll start to hit our normal time, and then once we get after the new year, it will be live. So that is the plan, at least. So tune in for that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and hopefully our Locked On YouTube channel comes in some point this week as well. So tune in for that if it happens as well. We'll figure out a way to disseminate that information and get it to you real quick. Also, as soon as we get the Locked On Ole Miss YouTube channel. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for everything that's going on. Be patient this week. It's going to be a weird one. I've got 3 radiations in the next 4 days. So it's going to cause me to, to flip when I video what's going on. And it's also going to cause me to pay attention a little bit less than I normally would. So this is going to be the weird week. So thank you for your patience on that. And in doing so, I hope everything works out well, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hotty toddy.